Leveling Endlessly with the Strongest System Chapter 71, more about mages. In the dead of night, while most were fast asleep, Roy explained stuff related to mages to Amelia. You've completed the transition from a mortal to a mage. He first congratulated her. To become a mage, one needed to cross 3 steps, the first of which was inducing mana into the body. This process was followed by using the mana in one's body to smash the gate of magic until it opens. Once that happens, one would naturally gain access to their sea of mana, an empty one. The last step was filling it with mana. When all these steps were completed, one would complete their transition, shedding their mortality and becoming a mage apprentice. That was Amelia's current level. Roy continued, but, you're still a few steps away from using elemental and special magic. Amelia widened her crimson eyes, glistening with curiosity at him, humming. She looked just like a cat. Roy subconsciously raised his hand to pat her. By the time he realized what he was doing, his hand was resting on her head, and her face was blushed red. He controlled the urge to call her cute and focused on the task at hand, which was filling the holes in her knowledge about mages. At your level, you can only use level 0 magic, which can be helpful in certain circumstances. Amelia curiously gazed at him. Master, what stage have I reached? As he had read the novel, Roy knew the ins and outs of being a mage. While recalling his past life knowledge, a thoughtful look appeared on his face. After summing it up, he shared it with Amelia. You're a trainee. This stage is divided into 3 levels, namely level 1 apprentice, level 2 acolyte, and level 3 demi-mage. No matter what level of a trainee, they are only able to use rank 0 spells. All spells that trainees can use are classified as level 0 by mages. Level 0 spells are of 3 types, offensive spells, defensive spells, and auxiliary spells. There are 3 ways to cast them. You can use a chant, special sets of hand signs, or construct a magic spell model in your sea of magic with your mana. Out of the 3 methods, the last one has been the trend for the past 200 years as it outshines chanting or using hand signs to cast a spell in all 3 big aspects. But you would need to have a clear picture of the model you want to establish there, or you'll fail, and that'll directly harm you. Roy warned Amelia with a grave look. Then, she saw his expression softening. I will teach you the method you would like to learn. To be the best or to play the game in the safest way. The choice is yours. I would like to go with the 3rd method. Amelia didn't hesitate before coming to this decision. You do realize there is a risk in constructing magic spell models in the sea of magic, right? Roy raised his eyebrow at her. Amelia nodded at him, saying, I understand that you're worried about my safety. But, currently, it is the trend for a good reason. Chanting or dancing with my hand when my opponent can cast spells by just calling out the name would make me look stupid. I don't want to come off as silly to others as that would embarrass you. I want to be the best version of myself as to glorify your name. Having a competent mage as a maid would undoubtedly make it seem like Roy was a prodigy among his peers. Thinking of the future, he couldn't help but reveal a smile. Roy glanced at Amelia warmly. Since that's your choice, I will teach that to you unhesitatingly. You can form 3 of them in your sea of magic at your level. Bring me a pen and dozens of sheets of paper. I'll draw them out for you. Okay. Pen and paper have existed in the far west since long ago, invented by mages who slaved away their life by staying locked up in their grand towers and researching and experimenting in order to make life easier for the common man. A wind blew in through the window, gently swaying the fire on the candles. A young man could be seen sitting close to a desk, sweating profusely as if he was playing with death. He moved his hand, and the tip of the pen held by him glided over the blank paper, gushing out a line on it. This stroke was a masterpiece. But the next one was like someone's misery. And the 3rd one could be compared to a child's doodling. Roy's face instantly crumbled. Fuck, I should have taken art classes in my previous life. Now, I can't even draw one magic spell model perfectly. He screamed in his mind, feeling exasperated. Hunters were the hype back on planet Earth. Only the rich, the truly interested, and the eccentric picked up hobbies like drawing. Roy was none of them. His hobby was reading novels and playing games, not sitting before a huge sheet and drawing out a masterpiece. The old Roy, however, was a noble, and although ill in the head, he was forced to take classes that included art until he dropped out after making marginal improvements. Ah, I'm so done with it, Roy roared. PFFD, Amelia chuckled as he crumbled another piece of paper into a ball and threw it behind him. You are very good at drawing, she complimented him sarcastically. Roy shrugged his shoulders, feeling a little disappointed. I am not. It took dozens of failures before he succeeded. The 3 spells that Roy gave his maid were of different types. ... Author here. Will Roy become a mage? Yes. After a bug revelation, he will. Will Amelia always be loyal to him? Is it useful to teach her magic and give her wings to fly? Yup. And she will work hard to support him in his journey. So Roy had made the right decision. Stay tuned. Leveling Endlessly with the Strongest System Chapter 72, Amelia learns a spell. Roy handed over his drawing to Amelia, saying, Acid Splash, Scorch, and Fleet Footwork. These are the magic spell models for them. First, memorize them. Once you're sure that you've memorized every stroke, nook, and corner of them, construct them in your sea of magic using mana. During that process, it would be best if you shaped mana to resemble them as closely as possible. It will take 24 hours for the magic spells module created this way to solidify in the magic sea. Remember, take one step at a time. Don't try to bite more than you can chew. Constructing one with a stable foundation is better than constructing 3 at a time. Don't go creating a magic spell model until the first one stabilizes. Roy was worried that in her excitement, Amelia would make a foolish mistake. Most people, when they come in contact with magic for the first time, would become awfully curious and hungry for it and thus make the mistake of doing more than advised by experts. A level 0 spell needed around 24 hours to stabilize in the magic sea. During that time, one shouldn't construct another model, or it may cause the still stabilizing one to shatter apart. Not to mention, unless one could split their consciousness into 2 parts, it was not challenging but nearly impossible to construct 2 magic spell models simultaneously. So, Roy gave multiple warnings to his maid not to be hasty when advancing in the path of magic. The fruit of patience is the sweetest for a reason, Roy added with a look of wisdom gracing his usually calm face. Amelia gave him a humble bow. I'll closely follow your teachings. Roy nodded at her and, with a thoughtful look, spoke. Acid Splash allows you to manifest and hurl a bubble of highly inflammable acid in the direction of your choice. Scorch heats up your hand. Normal items will be charred and rendered useless if you touch them with this spell applied to your hands. If you use 2 times the base mana needed to cast Scorch, your hands will hurt, but a flicker of flame would shoot out your palm. It'll be unharmful. A gentle wave of the harm would dispel it. But if you land it on Acid Splash, a fire would be created. The last spell increases your speed by 5 or 10 times, depending on the mana used. They aren't the best individually, but if used together, they would trouble your opponent greatly. And yes, keep in mind that a magic spell module can only bear a certain amount of load. 2 times the base mana needed to cast a spell is the typical limit. If you go beyond that, chances are high that cracks will appear in it, or it might even break, causing injuries and a drop in level. It takes months and a lot of resources to recover from such injuries. Roy explained the effects of the 3 spells and their combo to his maid. If a situation like an assassin breaking into the manor happens again, at least with these spells, Amelia would be able to save her hide. I understand. Amelia was immensely grateful to have a man like this as her master. She was just his slave, but he helped her become a mage and even taught her magic. He was too good to her. Just what could she do to repay him? Instead of sleeping, she worked hard to memorize the Acid Splash spell model overnight. Only by becoming a competent mage would she be able to share his burden. Roy was unaware of her thoughts. They were written on her face, but he couldn't see them as his eyes were closed. He was fast asleep. Some hours later, enticed by the chirping of the birds, he woke up. The first thing he saw in the morning was his maid sitting close to the window in a lotus position. Rays of sunlight invaded the room behind the window, kissing her graceful figure. An angel. The illusion of an angel overlapping with her was thus created. Roy was so confused that he rubbed his eyes and looked at her again. Damn, his maid was a charming cutie. She was dazzling, like a fairy. This was the first time he got such a clear look at her, and he had nothing but praise for her. To see a beauty when you wake up, what sight could be better than that? A closer and deeper look helped him notice the dark circles under her eyes. He immediately took them as proof of her hard work. Although there were patches under her closed eyes, it didn't take a hit at her cuteness. She was still pleasant to look at, just like any other time. You've worked hard. Knowing that she must have stayed awake to comprehend his teachings, Roy complimented her, not moving his eyes away from her figure. She opened her eyes and saw him gawking at her. Master, you woke up at the right time. I've shaped a part of my mana into the Acid Splash magic spell model in my Sea of Magic already. Now that I have reached this point, I can feel that once mana is poured inside it, it will absorb the energy particles from the surroundings and transform them intricately to form the spell, Acid Splash. Isn't this magic? You've done it. Congrats. Roy cheered her up. Now that she had gotten the confirmation of an expert, she became certain that she had learned a magic spell and her mood brightened up. It wasn't a waste to spend her time learning magic when she should have rested. While she was a mage, she still needed sleep to function normally, but she chose to sacrifice her present for a better future. Amelia said, I can feel that I can activate it 3 times, but I'm waiting for it to stabilize before showing it to you. Her face was screaming, Master, praise me, praise me. Leveling endlessly with the strongest system. Chapter 73, Swift Death Reappearance. Caught off guard by her bright gleeful gaze, Roy gave her a thumbs up. Good work. Keep it up. As she heard these words, a pleasant smile blossomed on the silly lass face. Amelia was far more intelligent than he thought. Roy knew about these magic spells models because he was following the author on Instagram and Twitter and was even a part of his Discord server, where he shared pictures of his characters, magic spells, runic stones, soul shards, bosses, and so on. They were very eye-catching. Thus, he couldn't forget them even now. He had looked at them hundreds of times in his past life. That's why he still remembered them like they were a significant part of his life. But overnight, this lass had etched the image of one such model in her mind like it was some child's play. She was nothing less than a prodigy. Rat-tat-tat. Just then, someone rapped on the door. The gazes of both master and maid turned to the door. Who is it? Master, it's me. May I come in? This was said in a voice familiar to Roy. He had heard it before. He knew it was Jan behind the door. No, Roy coldly refused him. Amelia placed one knee on the bed and leaned towards him, looking at him in confusion. Why? There was little distance between him, but her charming face was so close to him that he could feel the warm breath escaping her tender lips and brushing against his skin. Is she seducing me? It was a wonder how Roy was able to keep a straight face under these circumstances that would give a boner to any normal man. Roy replied, I don't want others to know that I can draw the model of magic spells or that you're a mage. If they were to know how capable we are, they would try to cozy up to us incessantly. We'll have bugs buzzing around us every day. Do you want that? Amelia immediately shook her head. No. Then, we must keep that hidden as to avoid trouble. I get it, Amelia said, I won't tell a single soul about this, I promise. Then, she crawled away, stepping out of bed. She walked to the sheets with invaluable knowledge, her hips swaying left and right so seductively that someone couldn't stop ogling at them. She picked them up, storing them in their secret locker. Meanwhile, Roy composed himself and focused his attention on the man behind the door. Why have you come? How should I say it? Jan, the son of Mart, was playing a fool, and this displeased Roy. The servants of the manor were capable in their own right. No matter how lowly, they had the talent of explaining the same situation using 10 different sentences. As Jan was fiddling with his finger, he heard a commanding voice from inside. Say it as it is. Jan gulped. There was an image of a person in his mind that caused rats to run in his stomach and blood to pump to that organ of his. He wasn't a dumbass, but because he had seen something too amazing so early in the morning, he was clearly out of it. He stomped his foot on the ground heroically. Fuck it. I will explain it as it is then. With this thought in his mind, he said, well, there's a femme fatale at the manor's gate, her beauty no less than the Empire's 4 flowers. Her sudden appearance attracted many. Some knights even woke up early to get a glance at her. What's confusing is that she's dressed like a maid and demanding to enter the manor to serve her, master. But the head butler had never seen her before. He doesn't know who she serves. How could he allow her entry? So, he made her stay outside and interrogated her over a cup of tea. He found out that she is here to work for you. But how could he take the word of a stranger for granted? So, he sent me here to confirm it with you. Jan explained what transpired today to Roy. Roy leaned back, resting against the heading, and chuckled. How could it be, if not swift death? Only she was capable enough to stir up a storm with her appearance. She was finally here. Amelia's face revealed curiosity. Do you know this person? Roy replied, yes, I do. She is a new friend. Due to receiving only silence as an answer, Jan was getting impatient and painting a whole bloody canvas in his mind. Maybe she isn't associated with this guy, after all. Doesn't that mean I have a chance with her? Such a gorgeous woman, it would be a waste to see someone else hooking up with her. Just as Jan was salivating because of the dirty thoughts he had towards a person who could kill him with a breath, Roy looked towards the door and commanded, escort her to me. Jan's heart trembled. It's really as he feared. That good-looking swan-like woman was wasted on a pig-like man like Roy. But what could Jan do? He was afraid of Roy. He could only watch him take away the woman he fell in love with one-sidedly. He went to the pavilion in which the butler was having a talk with Swift Death. The butler was an old man with white hair. He looked like he was in his 70s, but he was 40 years older than that. He was dressed well, in a tuxedo, and had a golden chain hanging out of his pocket. His hair was slicked back stylishly, and he had on a monocle. Jan went up to the head butler and whispered into his ears a thing or two. The manor's head butler came to the realization that everything this person who referred to herself as Delilah said was true and that he had misunderstood her, and hence, he turned to Swift Death with an apologetic look. Leveling endlessly with the strongest system. Chapter 74, The Scammer. Sorry for keeping you waiting, miss. Recently, a rat bastard had bypassed the defensive barrier and snuck into the manor. A proud look appeared on the butler's face as he said, our house's greatest soldier shooed it away. But ever since then, we're all on edge and have tightened our security. I apologize for the inconvenience I've caused you. But, I hope you don't take this to heart. I was just following protocols, doing my duty. Alberto wasn't just any ordinary guy. He was the head butler of this place, a direct butler of the Count. Delilah could feel he was on another level. Yet, he didn't hesitate to apologize for his mistake. Such a man was worthy of praise. But, the more he rambled, the more he pissed off Delilah. Swift Death, aka Delilah, had slender, long fingers, the likes of which would charm a man with a simple turn or twist. Hearing the butler's words, she curled them into a fist. It was hidden under the table, and her face only showed a smile. Thus, he failed to notice her anger. "You damned old fart, I'm the rat you're dissing." She cursed the head butler 1,000 times in her mind. Outwardly, with a charming smile, she said, "No problem. It's your job to have doubts about everything. It's known that the occupation and lifestyle of a person affect the actions they take in a different situation. You also had a break-in recently. That probably affected your interpretation of this situation negatively. There are plenty of thieves targeting wealthy nobles, sparing not even royals. So it's fine to be extra careful. But now that you know who I am and what I'm here for, may I go inside?" As an assassin, Delilah had a hand in everything. Scamming was a profession she had treaded on since she was young. Her words were flowery, making even noble feel lowly. Alberto felt enlightened. Delilah showed him where he was lacking. "Yes, I'll personally lead you to him." The butler gave her a nod. The way he was looking at her also changed. Previously, he was amazed at how beautiful she was, but he didn't let that show and kept a pleasant smile on his face as the one staff would show to customers. But now there was respect in his eyes for her, for he had found out that she had the 3 Bs. Delilah was led to Roy's room. Reaching this point, Alberto took his leave, leaving her standing a foot away from someone's door. She was just a wall away from meeting that sinful man again. He made her cry and saw her for who she truly was. She was hesitant about meeting him again. "How long are you going to stand out there? Come in." Just then, a hearty voice came from inside. It was like a calm breeze that tapped her back, giving her the push she needed to step forward. "I was just stabilizing my breath," Swift Death replied after entering the room. "I believe I have not told you my name the last time we met. It's Delilah." His eyes landed on her stunning visage and widened. "Wow, you look pretty good in that. This look suits you way better than that." Roy had only ever seen her in men's wear, and this was the first time he was catching her in women's clothing, and he must say that her charm was equal to that of a garden of roses. Teased by him, Delilah's emotions didn't fluctuate much. She deeply scrutinized him, finding no lust in his eyes. "He is different than the men and women I had met so far. Most look at me with lust, some with the desire to possess. But all of them had the same desire to taste me. But he's so committed to his goals that he thinks it's a bother to lust after another. For him to be like that, just what is he chasing after?" Roy had piqued Delilah's curiosity because he was the first man that wasn't giving in to her charms. His words sounded more like sarcasm to Delilah, and hence, she questioned. "Should I take that as a compliment?" Roy chuckled sarcastically. "Up to you." Amelia came close to Roy and looked at Delilah guardedly. "I feel like I have come across her before, but I can't remember where. Who is she?" Delilah gave a begging look to Roy, her new master. She was afraid he would tell her the truth. If the fact that she was an assassin that had broken into the manor a few days prior were to be revealed, she would never be able to properly get along with Amelia. If there were cracks in their relationship, her future would be miserable. She was wrong. Delilah didn't know that Amelia wasn't one to make life intentionally harder for others. At most, she would be ignored. A maid that you can share your burden with. A hidden blade that will point at anyone I want to be judged. She's our new companion who'll make life easier for us. Roy only exclaimed the last part as he feared that some fool would be sticking their ears to the walls in order to eavesdrop on them. And, he wasn't wrong. Mart, the father of Yan, was currently doing that, looking very silly. After hearing his definition of her, Amelia's eyebrow jumped. What? Bewilderment was plenty in her sweet voice. Sometimes he would speak in a way she couldn't comprehend, leaving her confused. This was one of those times. Roy beamed at Delilah. "Why don't you explain it to her while I take care of some business outside?" She gave him a nod. Then, she came awfully close to the cutie, grabbing her hands. "Let's just say I am a guard hired by him, here to protect you and him from hidden danger. This is my disguise. Dressing up as a maid makes it easier to blend in. To make my disguise perfect, I would be doing what a maid does. At that time, I hoped to receive guidance from little Cookie." She whispered into her ears, her sultry breath tickling Amelia's ears, the tips of which turned. Leveling endlessly with the strongest system. Chapter 75, The Rat. They were both girls, but Amelia felt like she was seducing her. She was uncomfortably close to her, so Amelia pushed her away whilst nervously uttering, "Ah. Okay, I'll teach you the ropes of being a maid. Is that really okay? You can refuse if you think I am asking for too much. I don't want to make you feel burdened just after meeting you." While saying this, Delilah was peering into her eyes. Amelia turned red under her gaze. Her eyes were the same color as her, but they had a nice curve to them that only worked to make them look seductive but also innocent. There weren't many people who had crimson eyes in the Empire. It was a surprise that both of Roy's maids were crimson-eyed. Amelia stammered something out that made Delilah smile. Whatever suspicions she may had about her, Delilah was planning on getting rid of them by becoming her friend. Meanwhile, Roy could be seen walking in a barely lit corridor. The outline of his figure could be barely discerned. His feet couldn't be seen. He was walking like a ninja, producing no noise. If anyone with a weak heart were to chance upon this scene, they would piss their pants, thinking it was a ghost and not a human inside the corridor. This ghost crept up to a bastard who didn't have the word privacy in his dictionary. Standing just a step away from Mart, who had his back turned to him, Roy extended his hand, placing it on Mart's shoulder. Mart, like any other coward, was so startled to feel something heavy pressing down on him that he jumped up, slamming his head against the wall. Why are you sticking so close to the wall, kitchen master? Is everything fine? Or, do you need help? There was a small opening to the side. It was a window without glass. Today was a cloudless sky. Sunlight coming through it illuminated Roy's face. Noticing who it was, Mart stammered, "Why, young master? What are you doing here?" Roy's eyes narrowed. "Why? Can't I be here?" He didn't need anyone's permission to go anywhere in the manor. After all, he was, legally, the fierce sword's third son. "And no, I mean to say, this humble servant never expected to see you here." Mart immediately put himself down in front of Roy. He was caught red-handed in the act of eavesdropping on a noble, but he was intelligent enough not to admit it. As long as he doesn't admit it, he wouldn't be punished. "What about you? Why would you be in this dim corridor?" Roy had a smile on his face. It could be seen from his expression that he fully intended to play with the dog. I came here to fix the light," Mart lied to Roy through his teeth. Roy glanced down, taking in the view of his sweaty face. "Why would you do that? You are the kitchen master. Your only duty is to serve us good meals. Have the other servants died? How dare they make you do such work?" The kitchen master's eyes twitched. "Why the fuck are you getting angry for my sake? Bastard, are you purposely shouting to attract the servants to this place to expose my lie? They aren't at fault. This corridor is just beside your room. It's a bad omen to leave it so dark. So, in a hurry to brighten it up, I didn't think of seeking help." Roy couldn't help but internally laugh at this guy. He could come up with an excuse for just anything. "Oh, I see. But the bulb is up there." Roy put more pressure on Mart. "What were you doing sticking your ears to this wall?" A moment of silence took place between them. Mart blinked at him, and Roy grinned back. Recently, why you see, I have been experiencing a bad case of diarrhea. When I walked into the corridor, my stomach started acting funny. Clutching it in pain, I stumbled all the here, and rested against the wall, and the pain started dying down. But I am afraid, I would have to take an urgent trip to the bathroom." Mart didn't know the amount of willpower he exerted to shit this out of his way, but he was certain that he had killed all his brain cells making up this lie. It was too hard to be a kitchen master in the Count's manor because all his sons were terrifying. "Are you waiting here to spoil your pants?" Roy embarrassed him even further. "Hurry up and go." "Why yes, I will." Mart stood up and dashed out of the corridor, turning right. Right then, he heard Roy's voice. "The bathroom is the other way." He chuckled to hide his nervousness. "And my old age must be getting to me." Mart went away, and Roy walked to the switch. Click tilde. The corridor brightened up. What a pathetic bastard, he can't even make up a proper lie. Roy dissed someone and walked back to the room, seeing two pretty flowers sitting close to each other, happily chatting away. They didn't even notice his arrival. Was he going to feel left out? No way. He was happy to see Delilah accompanying his maid. Amelia had found someone to talk to. She was more than 20 years old but didn't have a friend. It was good to see her getting along with someone. They cleaned up the place. Then, they had breakfast. Right after, Amelia unbuttoned her cuffs, rolled up her sleeves, and gave a shoulder massage to her master. A pleasant expression appeared on Roy's face as his maid's hands rubbed and kneaded the sore spots on his body. "Are you enjoying this?" He voiced out a hum of agreement. "Should I also join in?" Delilah questioned. The eyelid of one of his eyes cracked open slightly, and he glanced at the gorgeous lady standing close to his bed. "Again, it's up to you." Leveling endlessly with the strongest system. Chapter 76, The Schemer. Her being his maid was a facade he created to hide the fact that she was his blade from the masses. She didn't need to do the duty of the maid for him. To his surprise, she placed her butt on his bed, grabbed his feet, and placed them on her lap. Then, he saw her hands moving, her finger pressing against his toes and soles. Roy suspiciously stared at her. Why? She wasn't the type to curry favors with others. So, why was she being so nice to him? They only had a partnership, nothing more, nothing less. I've already decided to do every duty of a maid to make my disguise believable. So, don't mind me doing this. Delilah dutifully comforted him, and so did Amelia. With two women wonderful in their own rights massaging him, Roy felt like the luckiest man alive. But wait, this wasn't the time to be creating a harem. I'm feeling thirst. Roy gave a begging look to Amelia. Please get some tea prepared for us. How could she bear not to fulfill his wish? With the pretext of wanting to drink tea, Roy sent Amelia away. He stared at Delilah and grinned. What? I have a job for you. There's a wealthy merchant in the county. You may know of him. He's called Master Gray. Recently, I had an unpleasant encounter with him. He pissed me off in more ways than one. I've had him investigated and found out that his hands aren't clean. He leaned close to Swift Death and grabbed her hands, rubbing them. I can say with certainty that they're dirtier than yours. Delilah wasn't a good person. She had taken many lives. But she had a reason for that. As for Master Grey, he did others dirty because he considered them below him. But he's quite good at hiding the filth he is from others. I want to rip apart the facade he had cultivated over the years and expose what he truly is to the masses. I want him judged. I want him chained up and punished for his crimes. But for that to happen, I would need your help obtaining evidence of his vile deeds. Delilah yanked her hands out of his grasp. Were they something someone could touch causally? He must be getting back at her for touching his maid. What an irritating ass. If you want me to, I will spy on him, uncover his secrets. But without a lead, it will take me a long time. And, without a reasonable sum, this job might take forever. She glanced at him flirtatiously. What she was trying to tell him was obvious. He raised his hand, showing her one finger. I will pay you this much. Delilah rolled her pretty eyes at him, laughing sarcastically. 100 gold coins for spying on a weapon master is too little, don't you think? It's not 100 but 100 times that. Roy corrected her. What? Say that again. His words sounded too good to her ears. So she demanded him to say them again. Sadly, Roy didn't have the habit of repeating himself. You'll be taking that much home if we get him judged in less than 3 days. You only have 2 days to get dirt on him. Delilah rubbed her chin thoughtfully. She was sitting with her legs parted just like a man. If not for her long skirt, her underwear would have been exposed. The time limit is too short. What he was asking for her to do was impossible, even for a gold-plated assassin. She knew herself best. She wasn't capable enough for this job. She couldn't do it. Just then, Roy said something that piqued her interest. I have a lead for you. Go on. She waved her hand, telling him to continue. Roy's calm demeanor, as well as his fake smile, vanished, replaced by sharp eyes, a thoughtful and scheming look. He who have many things to hide trusts not his kin, nor his people, for if he does, hell may befall him. These were not Roy's own words but the words of a man who had earned his respect. His lifestyle makes it impossible for him to trust others. Trusting someone must mean creating a pitfall for himself. A single push by his trusted person would land him in the depths of the abyss. Thus, he has no one to trust. Furthermore, he had to doubt everything and everyone because a single misstep could become the reason for his downfall. And that probably led him to have half-assed relations with his people. He has many officials on his payroll. Together, they had done dirty deeds. Of course, he isn't man enough to trust them. I mean, who would? Yet, they had never betrayed him so far. Isn't it quite questionable? It's like he had leashed them, making them his dogs. He must have something to keep them in control. Records of the gifts he has given them so far, as well as evidence of the things he had done with them, must be lying somewhere in the world. Taking his personality into consideration, he must be hiding it close to himself. You might find them in the lockers of his study, or there might be some kind of hidden dungeon beneath his house, storing what we need. Carl was a sex maniac. Even though he had 2 wives, he liked to buy slaves and do them dirty. He would do that deed with them in the underground dungeon. Roy came to know about that place after he inspected him. Similarly, Roy came to know about the fact that Grey had bribed officials after inspecting him. Fuck, what are you? Delilah blurted out. She was shocked by his reasoning skills and looked at him like she was looking at a monster. Roy wasn't super intelligent. He was able to connect the dots and come to such a conclusion because the teaching of his substitute teacher was in his mind. When he was aiming to become a hunter, one of the people meant to teach Class B2, the class he was a part of, was severely injured in a life and death struggle against the beasts. Substituting him was a charming psychologist. With the arrival of the new era, the federal government lost its leash on the people, and criminals increased in volume. He was studying criminals to understand why they, while being humans, are lowering the survival rate of their race. Attending his classes didn't only benefit Roy, but also helped him understand human nature. Of course, he couldn't tell that to Delilah. He couldn't tell anyone that he was a foreign soul. That was his greatest secret. Telling it to others was the same as creating the possibility of getting hunted down by the soul chasers. So he gave her a vague reply. Your master. Swift Death was pissed off and landed a fist on his belly. Nothing less expected of an assassin with a short temper. It felt more like a gentle tap to Roy, causing him to chuckle. She glared at him subconsciously. I swear, each time you open your mouth, I feel the urge to punch someone in the face. Roy gave her a sarcastic look. Scary Tilda. Delilah rolled her pretty eyes at him. She couldn't hurt him even if she wanted to. He didn't need to feel scared of her. Leveling endlessly with the strongest system. Chapter 77, The Jumper. Delilah stood up, walking to the window. Roy's head turned to the side, his eyes landing on her back, only to notice that she was no longer in a maid's costume. She was wearing her assassin's outfit. And, her melons and hips had also decreased in thickness. So, she was cross-dressing as a male again. Where are you going? Standing close to the window, she leaned sideways, landing her awfully serious glance on Roy. To bring you good news. Just as she left, a systems notification rang in his mind. Open hollow corner bracket ding. Congratulations. You've changed the fate of the character, Swift Death, in such a way that the possibility of the character, Teleporter, has decreased to 0. You've nipped a major villain in the bud. You get the passive title, The Cruelest Hidden Sword of the Sun. You'll be able to see what can't be seen. Close hollow corner bracket. Open hollow corner bracket ding. Congratulations. You've eliminated the shadow of death that would have extinguished the glorious sun 2 years later. You have been bestowed the first shard of Ninim's first song, A Deceitful Heaven. Close hollow corner bracket. Right then, Roy felt tremendous pressure acting on him. He did feel uncomfortable, but that pressure wasn't harming him and instead comforting him. So he eased down, relaxing his tense nerves. Open hollow corner bracket. You've entered the eyes of the Far West's awakened soul. Close hollow corner bracket. Roy rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Not killing Swift Death was the right idea. He had gained 3 things out of it. The most important was naturally the incomplete version of Ninim's first song. He couldn't sing it now as it required him to be a mage. But once he does sing it, he would be able to create a doppelganger. The process would be painful, but he was willing to endure all pain to give a second life. The attention of the world was no less important than this. If he gained its acknowledgement, he would earn a nice power-up. The passive title was something he couldn't understand. Even inspecting him provided him with the same information. It allowed him to see what couldn't be seen. That's it. He looked around but didn't notice anything extra. Amelia returned with Alberto by her side. He had come to give Baldwin's 3rd-grade medallion to the new maid, but she was nowhere to be seen. Alberto looked around, not finding Delilah. So, he turned to the only person who could know of her whereabouts. Where is she? With a straight face, Roy uttered, crying in the bathroom. Alberto's eyebrows jumped. What kind of sick reply was that? Was this guy really his 3rd young master, who was as gullible as a sheep? Oh, she must be feeling homesick. Alberto coughed, wondering why Roy had narrowed his eyes at him. Roy pointed at the thing in his hand, saying, "Leave that with me. I will give it to her." Alberto handed it over to him without a second thought. "Then, I will entrust you with this matter." Immediately after, he made him leave. Where had she gone? When he was gone, Amelia asked for Delilah's whereabouts from her master. "To do dirty work for me." Roy gave her an honest reply as he did not feel the need to hide things from his trusted subordinate. Bam! Suddenly, the door was smashed open by Alberto, and he dashed toward Roy with a desperate look on his face. He was so incredibly fast that he was standing with his back to him in the time it took for Roy to blink his eye. What's wrong? Roy could tell he didn't intend to harm him. He was here to protect him. But from what? He signaled Amelia to come closer, and she walked up to him. "A storm is coming. I can sense it." He was sweating profusely, his hands shaking. If possible, he didn't want to face that storm. But it was his duty not to let the seeds of his lord be harmed. He couldn't turn his back on his responsibility at this critical juncture. Suspiciously, he stared at thin air. Roy and Amelia followed his gaze, looking at the opposite end of the room. Right there, a portal opened up. It was blue in color and looked more like mana swirling around. They were only able to catch a glimpse of it before it disappeared. Left behind was an upside-down bald man. They recognized this man at first glance. He was too unique to be mistaken for someone else. "You uncle." The upside-down Arlo waved his hand at Roy. "Yeah, it's me. How you doing?" "Fine. But, where did you drop out from?" Arlo didn't have a reply prepared for that. Arlo stood up like Jackie Chan and rubbed his head. "That damn stingy pig, couldn't he prepare a stable portal for me?" Only curses could be heard coming out of his mouth. "Your entrance is as heroic as ever, Second Lord." Alberto praised Arlo. Roy really started considering whether he was blind. "That was the only way for me to urgently return to see my little nephew." Arlo grinned at the startled 3. Roy eyed him suspiciously. "Why are you here?" Arlo took a wooden box out of thin air and tossed it to Roy, saying, "To give you this. You don't know the amount of trouble I had to go through to get them. Sleepless nights, fighting mages and knights, dancing in daylight, you name it, I've done it all for you." It landed on his bed and, with a garish noise, opened up. Several rare herbs were revealed to him. Seeing them, Amelia's eyes widened, and Alberto's mouth watered. She didn't know what they were, but because they were glittering like gold and carried a smell more pleasant than a rose, she determined them to be worth tens of thousands of gold. Alberto, who knew what they were, couldn't help but keep his eyes on them. "How did you get them to fork these out in merely days?" Roy wondered. "It's a long story." Arlo looked out the window thoughtfully, remembering the things that had transpired not long ago. Leveling endlessly with the strongest system. Chapter 78, Arnard Leglas Orlando. Several hours ago. Somewhere in the north of the far west continent existed the dream of many mages. It was a tower closely resembling a fortress. Cannons could be seen poking out of the box-sized windows, These were all powered by magic and were capable of chasing away the deadliest horde of monsters. On the inner curtain walls were knights dressed in resplendent silver armor, and on the towers attached to them were a group of mages, sitting in a circle, playing cards. The mage tower was equipped with the best sensory and defensive magic formation. No sentient being could escape its live radar that was continuously doing scans of the surrounding terrains. Mini-screens were floating around mages. Represented in them were the surrounding area and the beings in them in the form of dots. One such dot suddenly appeared on the cliff facing the tower. Ring, wrong, ding. Immediately, all the mages and knights were alerted of the intruder, and they looked towards that single spot where a being could be seen standing. He was under the shades of trees. Thus, they weren't able to get a clear picture of him. But from his towering outline alone, they took him as some kind of troll. Halt! I warn thee not to approach the tower. The likes of this place welcome you not. The commander of the mage corps of this tower warned the creature at the cliff. But the being acted like he couldn't hear him and advanced, stepping out of the darkness, his figure clearly revealed. Everyone saw what he looked like. He was a bald man with a muscled figure and abs that rippled down his torso like waves in the ocean. He didn't look handsome, but because of his physique, he was particularly striking. Who could he be if not Arlo? He came to a stop only after standing at the edge of the cliff. Then, he raised his head, looking at the knight captain and the mage commander. Allow me to introduce myself. Name's Arlo. I come from the northern county of Baldwin, here with the purpose to have an audience with your lord. Humbly he said, yet all he got in return was jeers. Hearing his words, the mage commander sarcastically chuckled. Do you think just anyone can be granted a meeting with Lord Demarcus? His voice was forceful and authoritative as he said, get lost. Arlo was being stared at by dozens of pairs of hungry eyes. Anyone in his shoes would be scared shitless. But he didn't show an ounce of fear. Instead, he looked pissed off. Fuck being humble. Let's do things my way. Arlo glared back at them and spoke. Demarcus, I will give you one chance to get your ass over here and greet me. If I don't see you in 3 minutes, I will welcome myself inside. And, you will find it very, very rude. His words were like a direct challenge to the owner of this mage tower. It immediately pissed off everyone. Who the heck does he is to look down on our lord? He must be a frog that recently escaped the well and thus, knows not how huge the world is. To ask our lord to come to him, he must be one arrogant price. Mage commander turned to the person beside him. Does the lord know of him? I've never heard him talking about having a bald friend. But that doesn't mean he has no connection with him. Maybe he's someone my master knows. It's best if we wait for my master to arrive. We'll deal with him any way my master likes. The lord also had a butler. This butler was the closest to Demarcus. It wasn't wrong for the mage commander and the knight captain to think he knew him best. What is the lord doing right now? Knight captain asked. The butler replied, he's busy eating, and, you know, he doesn't like to be disturbed during his meals. We can only wait. The mage commander disdainfully glared at Arlo, who was stretching his body. A dumbass is about to raid our tower. I'm afraid we don't have time to wait for the lord to finish his meal and pay attention to this matter. Then, what should we do? The knight captain's voice was husky. It was full of depth and power. He narrowed his eyes and eyed the mage beside him. Isn't it obvious? Let's teach this bastard a lesson. The mage commander's words put a smile on the knight's face. He immediately shouted, all forces, attack. Hundreds of archers pulled arrows out of their quiver, setting them up in their bows. The mages followed suit, raising their staffs and pointing them at the man on the cliff. The heavy-armored knight jumped out of the fortress, diving towards him. The possibility of using the magic cannons didn't cross their mind. Who would need such things against a single man? The butler turned to leave. There was no reason left for him to be here. They had decided to take care of the man. There's no way he would survive. He could only report this matter to his master. TCH. I guess I got no choice but to cause some mayhem. Arlo curled his fingers into a fist and punched out. A great shockwave burst out, the likes of which these battle-hardened warriors have never seen. It snapped the hundreds of arrows raining down the skies in two. It blasted apart the hundreds of fire and giant earthen snakes into smithereens. All the knights in midair were also smashed away by it, their figures becoming a dim light on the horizon. The grand barrier around the mage tower that was barring entrance to all the harmful elements outside was struck by it too and shattered like a glass getting smashed by a hammer. The sound of the barrier's destruction was extremely crisp. The butler stopped and looked behind. What he saw shocked him to his core. The mages were frozen stiff like statues. Their leaders were feeling no better. Their eyes were protruding, threatening to pop out of their sockets, and their jaws had long since fallen to touch the ground. Did our frontal assault, vanguards, and defensive barrier just fall to one punch of that man? Tell me this is a joke, right? I must be dreaming. Everyone was finding it hard to believe what they had just witnessed. There exist men in the Empire that shouldn't be slighted. Let today be the example of what happens when they are unreasonably troubled. Arlo taunted him as he released a skill unique only to him. Called the Dragon's Eyes, it was a technique unparalleled. You guys should take a nap. After you wake up, reflect on your foolish actions. Whoosh! The swift gales danced in the forest, shaking 1,000 branches. Kissed by the storm, the leaves rustled. A song was sung, doom was to descend upon some. Aroused was a dragon from his sleep. Those lids closed for decades were lifted yet again. Ugh! Ah! The ones who stood up to oppose Arlo felt their bones twisting and their heads exploding as a great pressure acted upon them. Blood burst out of their nose and trickled out of their ears. The next instant, they collapsed one after another, falling to the ground with dull thuds. Leveling endlessly with the strongest system. Chapter 79, Arnard Leglas Orlando, B. Although exposed to the Dragon's Eyes, breathing they still were. Certainly, Arlo couldn't have killed them while holding back. At the wall, only the butler remained conscious. But the defensive treasure his master had crafted for him was in pieces. If not for it, he would have been like the people around him, sprawled on the ground, injured with blood coming out of his holes. The butler felt his butt tighten. He stood up and ran towards the depth of the tower. Only his master could deal with this monster. Meanwhile, Arlo knocked, opened an entrance in the Mage Tower and walked inside. He was a noble. Thus, he could only enter it the righteous way, which was going through the front door. It's just that he created a front door himself. The butler broke the rule and went into the diner where his master was having a scrumptious meal. Master, it's terrible, we're under siege. He broke the bad news to DeMarcus. No voice could enter this room from outside as it was protected by noise cancellation magic. Thus, DeMarcus didn't know his home was being invaded by an old friend. How many? He questioned calmly. Only one. The butler screamed like he was losing his mind. He shattered our magic barrier and forces with one punch. He must have invaded the magic tower by now. What? What did you say? DeMarcus could no longer remain calm after hearing his words. He lost his cool. The butler was sweating buckets. It's as you heard. A man has forced his way into the tower. DeMarcus tightened his fist so much that the fork in his hand was bent out of shape. Who is it? He didn't tell us much about him. The butler replied, I only know that he calls himself Arlo. The word Arlo was foreign to him. He didn't know anyone named Arlo. Yet, a picture of a certain someone came to his mind. Nah, it can't be him. He immediately dismissed the idea of Arlo being Arnard Leglas Orlando. Speak of the devil, and he shall appear. Aku. While wiping his nose, Arlo entered the dinner. And I was wondering who was talking shit about me behind my back. So it was you guys. The butler was bewildered. This man was acting like he knew his master. He was also treating this place like his own. He casually walked up to the seat opposite to DeMarcus and sat down, putting up a napkin as if he was ready to be served a hot meal. Looking at Arlo, DeMarcus's eyes widened to the size of a saucer. As Sir Third Hidden Blade, DeMarcus uttered in shock. Third Hidden Blade was a term not many have heard, but it came as a bolt out of the blue for the butler. He was petrified and stood rooted to his spot like a mummy. You recognized me, what a surprise. I thought you'll need some time to do that. Arlo rubbed his head, feeling pity for himself. I don't have hair left to show off, after all. What happened to your hair? DeMarcus remembered this man. He used to have long lion-like hair that dropped to his waist. But now the lush land was barren. If not for the fact that they were close friends, he would have had 1,000 difficulties in recognizing him. This is the result of a magical experiment gone wrong. Arlo sighed while pointing it out. Master, who is he? Do you know him? The butler asked. DeMarcus nodded. Recalling the memories of the war, he said, when the Sun Kingdom was getting attacked by the Three Kingdoms, rumors circulated that it would fall in less than a month. That's just how much the enemy forces outnumbered us. But the war continued for a very long ago. We are told that it was all made possible by the valiant Knights of the Sun. But that's just one part of the story, used to cover up what really happened. The current Sun was in his 20s then. Overthrowing the Three Kingdoms wasn't something he was capable of. But 7 capable men were loyal to him. They were called the 7 Hidden Blades. They carried out the grandest assassinations in history. The Archmages and Grand Knights of the enemy kingdom were felled by them. With the enemy's main forces slowly getting out of the picture, it was impossible for them to overthrow the Sun Kingdom. They didn't know who and what was killing their powerhouses. But one thing was sure: if this continued, they would never be able to fulfill their ambition. So they planned against the unknown. One hidden blade after another fell to their ploy and was caught and executed. The kingdoms thought that these capable men would stop making assassinations as there were traps in place. But they thought wrong. The hidden blades weren't afraid of death. And they continued to follow the current emperor's order to the bitter end. The war ended after the Emperor merged with the Divine Soul Shard. But the ones who bought time for him to absorb it were the Hidden Blades. If not for them, we would have not known this peace. The sad part is, if those 7, 4 are confirmed to be dead, only 3 are still alive. Arlo pointed at himself. And, I am one of them. The Sun's Hidden Blades were satisfied with their duty to prevent the doom of the Sun Kingdom. Wealth, beauty, and status were not capable of moving their hearts. They put everything on the line for their king, their life, their time, and existence itself. Even though they had all the power and might to live a life of riches and glory, they dedicated their lives to a single task: stop the advancement of the 3 kingdoms at the cost of their life. The sun was bright, hiding them from the masses. Even if a man wanted to see them, he would only get his eyes stung by the rays of sunlight. They weren't martyred like the fallen soldiers, nor were they awarded with glory and status. Yet, they died without regret. And of those who lived, Arlo didn't regret it either. His name is Arnaud Leglas Orlando, the Sun's 3rd Hidden Blade. It's my honor to be in your presence again after all these years. DeMarcus, the Elder Lord of Charlotte, paid his respect to Arlo, the brother to the fierce sword count. We're all friends here. Why the need to bow to me? Stand up and get your butler to serve me a hot meal. I'm famished. Arlo waved his hand. DeMarcus straightened his back. I'll get it prepared right away, DeMarcus replied and looked at his butler. Comprehending his signal, he immediately went behind the bar and put the steak on the barbecuers. To what do I owe this honor? After dinner, he couldn't help but try to poll around in order to understand why he had visited him. Arlo tapped his finger on the armrest of the chair he was sitting in. Let's talk over a cup of tea. He was obviously here because of that nephew of his. DeMarcus was the previous head of the Charlotte family. But even the current head couldn't say no to his requests. He was the one who had made Rose betrothed to Roy as he wanted to solidify his friendship with Arlo. Arlo, your granddaughter is quite arrogant. DeMarcus, what? Did she do something to offend you? Arlo, with a straight face, said, she slapped our faces. DeMarcus jumped up from his seat, his face red like a steaming tomato. She dared. Head butler wondered, is she still alive? Only a fool would offend a hidden blade that could behead an archmage. Arlo laughed, not really. I was speaking metaphorically. But she did send her servant to break off the marriage with my nephew. That's a pretty bad way of calling things off. He noticed DeMarcus's face turning from red to pale. You look like you don't know of this taking place. Were you unaware? DeMarcus felt angry at his family. My research has been keeping me busy. I have been stuck in here for ages. If I knew that they had done that, I would have forced him to visit the Count and beg for his forgiveness. But those bastards, they didn't even consider informing me of this matter. Don't be angry at them. It's gold. It's not like everyone is like me, able to endure the harsh wind present in the terrain of this place and the icicles rain that takes in it. They most likely can't come here, Arlo said. I will go back and have the marriage mended immediately, DeMarcus proposed. Arlo shook his head. The milk has already been spilled. And anyways, love can't be forced. My nephew also doesn't want to become a cuckold. You see, the breakup is still to be done in an official manner, but your granddaughter has already hooked up with a different man. Now that's what I call talent. I don't want that lass in my house, but her actions have offended us greatly and scarred my nephew for life. Do you know, nowadays, he trembles just from getting touched by a man. I hope you can fork out a reasonable sum to compensate at least him. Well, his condition does sound bad, DeMarcus asked, but what can I do to help? Hearing these words, Arlo internally smiled. The fish has taken the bait. I won't ask for much. Just fulfill the poor boy's wishes, and we will still be friends with no grievances between us. He tossed a piece of paper to DeMarcus. His wishes, they're on this list. DeMarcus looked at the list. What they were asking for was too much, but it was like a drop of water in his sea of wealth. He didn't mind scooping it out if it meant to satisfy the 3rd hidden blade. Consider them fulfilled. Thus, he agreed to the terms put forth by Arlo. Arlo didn't want to travel back on foot. Thus, he requested that DeMarcus open a portal for him. Portals were quite costly to run. The longer the distance to be traveled, the higher the cost of magic crystals. The county was far away. He would surely net a loss if he fulfilled this request of Arlo. But what choice did he have? He opened the portal anyway but didn't enchant it with a stabilizer before pushing Arlo inside. That's how Arlo ended up upside down in Roy's room. Leveling endlessly with the strongest system. Chapter 80, The Alchemy Workshop. Alberto had gone away to tend to the Count's needs. Amelia was busy memorizing the magic spell models. Roy and Arlo were contesting who could scrutinize the room better. Seeing the magic spell models in Amelia's hands, Arlo was surprised. But what shocked him even more was that Roy was stronger than a trainee. Without using any equipment, he was able to determine Roy's power level. That spoke volumes of how discerning he could be. Although he looked like a not-so-intelligent man, he was actually smart, like a fox. To not come off as too overbearing and make Roy feel like he was putting him on a hard spot, Arlo didn't point that out nor did he ask where the maid got those papers. Roy, on the other hand, was scrutinizing his every move. He had intentionally not hidden anything from this uncle of his to see what he would do. He was testing him, trying to feel him out. But Arlo didn't take any action, confusing him. Suddenly, Roy flashed him a smile. "The favor you owe me, the time has come for you to repay it." Arlo had promised to fulfill a wish of his in order to write off the bad debt between them. And Roy planned to use this to gain the utmost benefit. Arlo crossed his legs and gave Roy a deep look. "Tell me what you want. You're an alchemist, right? Help me create a potion." At this moment, to Roy, it seemed like Arlo was just about to refuse, so he immediately added, "And don't think I am asking for too much. You would be benefiting from this just as much as me." The truth was Roy's situation was perilous. He needed to get rid of the parasite in him at any cost. Only then would he save his life and get rid of his intolerance to mana. He didn't want this chance to go to waste by acting himself to turn these rare herbs into an elixir. He was a noob, and the chances were that he might mess up and fail. That's why he was trying to make an expert alchemist act in order to make the elixir. Seemingly interested in hearing him out, Arlo leaned forward. "Oh, in what way exactly?" The corners of Roy's mouth turned slightly, subtly expressing friendliness to Arlo. "The recipe of this elixir that I am asking you to make doesn't exist in the far west. I'm the first one to get my hands on it. On the pretext that you get it done for me, this knowledge will be shared with you as a sign of friendship." Arlo glided his thumb back and forth over his temple, slowly coming to a decision. "It's not like it is hard for me to perform alchemy for you. And, since I am getting an unknown recipe for free, I agreed to help you. But do you have all the ingredients prepared?" Roy replied, "I don't have the subs, but the main ones should be enough." The parasite killer was a unique elixir. It could be prepared with or without the subs ingredients. It's just that the volume of the elixir would be affected without the subs. But Roy had enough of scheming and waiting. He wanted to have it immediately and free himself of certain restrictions pressing his heart. "Where are they?" Arlo had a glimpse of his teeth when Roy showed him the wooden box. "Inside here. These were the herbs Roy made him get from the Charlotte family." "The recipe, where did you get it from?" This question was something Roy hadn't prepared an excuse for yet. "It's a secret." By next time, he would have an excuse prepared for him. Roy was an orphan. He had learned many things growing up. He knew how to play the blame game. He couldn't tell Arlo that he got this recipe by reading a novel in another world. That was a quick way of getting himself locked up, tortured, and interrogated. That's why he was planning to pin this windfall on something else, something credible. For example, saying he got it from the trial grounds was a good excuse. Arlo stood up and walked out of the door. "Accompany me." He left behind these words. Roy immediately sat up, fit his feet in the shoes, and chased after him. Amelia immediately put her papers aside and ran up to him, asking, "Can I tag alone?" Roy threw a fleeting glance her way, shooting out, "Yeah, sure." Thus, Amelia and Roy went out of the manor with Arlo. "Where are you taking us?" Roy asked. Arlo raised his hand to stop a horse-driven carriage as he replied, "A place where alchemy becomes easy. It's run by an old friend of our family. He's elegant but can get grumpy. Words once spoken cannot be taken back. Be thoughtful when speaking in his presence. He's not an easy man to anger. But once you do, earning his forgiveness is harder than climbing demon-infested mountains." With an air of confidence, Roy replied, "To not anger a person is a simple task for me." The door was opened. He walked inside. It could fit a few people. But not Roy. He helped Amelia inside. She was reluctant to leave his side, but he was insistent about her taking the carriage, so she complied with his wishes. He patted her horse, telling the driver to get a move on. Hiya. The carriage moved on the busy street slowly, and he walked alongside it. An hour or so later, they reached a certain workshop in the southern district of the county. Boom. An explosion was heard, and smoke could be seen coming out of it. Roy gawked at the building whose sign had just dropped to the ground with a dull thud. What exactly is this place? By then, Arlo and Amelia had come out of the carriage. Arlo tossed a coin to the driver and turned to Roy with a grin. In the county, this is the only place with equipment that supports alchemists in making elixir. It's an alchemy workshop. Let's go inside. The workshop's interior was in a much better shape than the exterior as it had been properly taken care of. Just a short while after walking inside, they coincidentally met Arlo's friend. He had an average face, greying hair, and wrinkles on his face, but he was full of elegance, and the scent of woods and medicine wafted off of him, and when Roy inspected him, he only got a bunch of question marks. This man was definitely high-leveled. Let me introduce him to you too. He is called Vizards, an honorary elder mage of the county. Most of the time, he is roaming outside. This year, he won't be going anywhere. I guess old age must have gotten to him too, putting a brake on his rusty pedals. Vizard's face darkened. I can hear you. Old friend, these two are my nephew and his maid. Both are, as you see, talented. One has a sharp tongue, so don't mind what he says. The other has a good character and is mature for her age. You may have a good time chatting with her. Arlo introduced Roy's esteemed self to his friends so nicely that Roy felt like awarding him a punch. It was a real wonder how Arlo was able to survive that long with a tongue that would subconsciously piss off others.